Hello everyone and welcome. Early on in the movie, there was talk about something mysterious killing people for no apparent reason. He received feedback from YouTube users on seeing a video with a weird and crazy scientist carrying out experiments on Asian students by putting wires on their heads, as described by those who viewed the video, where the matter seemed exciting so it went viral. But the problem is that whoever watched the video started to have hallucinations, and some of them died for some unknown reason, while some of them never believed all this. So buckle up and listen to today's story. Shadow People 2013. Our story begins in Cambodia in 1979, where a group of villagers spoke about something that was near the village, and the man who saw it died right afterward, because it assaulted him when he was asleep. But when they saw his body that afternoon, there wasn't for any signs of murder or stabbing, while his face seemed terrifying. This little boy listened to what they said, but his mom kicked him out to sleep in his room. When the mother came to put out the candles, he asked her to leave a lighted candle, but she said not to fear because the story of those men is just a fairy tale, and left when the child remained alone. After that, he saw something, made a noise and attacked him. The mother saw a shadow as though something was moving, and when she reached the room, she found the child dead. Charlie is working on the radio tonight, and the broadcast is open for phone calls. The first call he received was an ordinary call about emotional relationships online. However, the second call didn't appear normal, as the caller's voice was intermittent and trembling. His name was Jeff. He said that he saw shadows of unreals, but the house's response wasn't appropriate for the caller. He said, "Please direct your madness to a psychologist. We're busy with a lot of calls," and hung up. The next day, Charlie got a package sent to him by a Jeff written on it, "Read and believe." Once he opened it, he found photos of a doctor with patients lying on the beds, and something weird on their heads. A notebook with the drawings of something that resembles someone. Some papers written on it as what Jeff said to Charlie last night, and the files belonged mainly to Camden College. During his night shift, the first call he received was from Jeff asking if he had received the package. Charlie told him there was some interesting information on it, but he didn't understand what it was. Jeff said he didn't get it either, and he's actually afraid of sleeping and not waking up again. He lives alone, and every night they come to him, where he finds himself incapable of moving, so he's armed to protect himself. Now he sees them. Then suddenly they hear a gunshot, and Jeff doesn't answer. After that, they were informed that the young man is in the hospital, but fortunately he didn't get hurt because the bullet only hit the wall. The next day, Charlie went to interview the young man, but the clerk said he was dead and the cause of death was unknown. Charlie went to Camden College to do research on Dr. Ravenscroft, where he reached the college library with difficulty. Then he was able to get permission to copy the information he wished. Suddenly, the printer broke down, and when the librarian went to repair it, she found this paper stuck, so she brought the relevant books home with her to read. While taking her shower, she noticed a shadow on the shower curtain, but nothing happened, and she couldn't find anything. However, when she went to sleep, she seemed to see something. Her jaw muscles and hairs moved abnormally, and then she no longer moved. Even the radio signals had been disturbed. When her friend went back home, she found her dead. But this didn't stop there. Complaints continued to spread, and explained deaths continued to increase. People say this thing happens to them when they are asleep, as they are exhausted. They can neither move, speak, nor breathe easily. Charlie comments and says, "Is there something we do in our sleep that brings us this?" The doctors commented on this and said it was a sleep paralysis, which is quite normal for everyone. But witnesses said this didn't look like sleep paralysis because they see ghostly form as a 9-foot shadow. After the number of complaints increased significantly, Charlie decided to take the challenge and look into the matter. And while he was at home, he looked at his shadow. So he found it moving differently than his body movement. He was horrified, but things go back on track. This person is an immigrant from Asia, says that seeing shadows in their country has been common all along. And according to official sources, these shadows began to appear with Vietnam's immigrants arriving in America after the war. Well, when they were medically examined, they found no biological factors indicating problems that could result in sudden death. Even the possibility of cardiac arrest is non-existent. So, the reason is totally unknown to scientists. But in the archives, they found a case infected by something we call sudden unexplained death syndrome in Northeast Thailand, and it is identical to the cases found here in the US. This is Sophie from the CDC, or the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, has started doing a research on the etiology of this syndrome when she went to Charlie and asked him as the first person who talked with a case who died suddenly. He showed her this information, but she didn't believe it, as there is no real evidence of its existence from her perspective, and she said she'd never believe it until she see it firsthand. He then guided her to search for Dr. Ravenscroft from Camden College. When she got there, she found Fisher, who told her he was a crazy scientist. In 1971, he carried out an experiment on students to prove the possibility that the brain controls things remotely but was unsuccessful. Worst of all is that all the students the experiment was done on died. He therefore gave up the experiments, and even the materials used in the experiment were destroyed and considered dangerous. Well, there are other skeptics who think the college keeps everything secret from the public, and the most peculiar is that he lived in a large house and completely devoid of furniture. Back to Charlie, he seems to have become obsessed and interested in this all the time, but he is trying to ignore it. What happened when he switched off the TV? He noticed a moving shadow which was reflected on the screen. He looked behind him, but couldn't find anything. Then it appeared again as if something had moved behind him. On his shift tonight, he said, "Talk about the devil and he will appear before you." It seems that he's starting to recognize the reasons for the spread of this strange thing. He's only targeting those who think about it. But isn't Charlie's broadcast responsible for this thing spreading like an epidemic by talking about it? At Marion's house, she went to sleep as every night, but we see as if something passed by there and the lights flickered. The shadow now went through her legs. She looked around and saw a shadow with the head of a monster attacking her. Here she showed incapacity to move and difficulty to breathe. Then the silence reigned. In the morning, Sophie went to Charlie's house to tell him what he said was true, and thus she wanted to dig his grave to look at the body and analyze it in the lab. She was told that he had been cremated, but Fisher told her that he had been laid to rest in a cemetery near the college. So, if he had been cremated, who was buried there? When they went to the grave and opened it, they found a film. When they turned it on, they found an experiment by Ravenscroft that explores the possibility of students opening the door only through thinking, in which he linked their brains to devices that monitor their brain's activity. So it worked and the door moved. Suddenly, one of the students started trembling violently and the record was over. Jesus, what a terrible thing. But Sophie didn't believe it and thought it was a hoax. Charlie grabbed the film and told her that he wouldn't give it to her and that he would give it to the press as proof that it was true. And since she was an epidemiologist, she didn't care and left. When he went to bed, a lot of strange things were going on in the house. When he was asleep, the door opened and he woke up and was unable to move. And the shadow on the right began to come closer and closer. So he got out of the bed and the TV switched off. Jesus, he escaped from his grasp. But he couldn't sleep and looked completely confused and disoriented. He wasn't okay. Now everything was terrible in his house and he couldn't bear to see these things. So he got rid of all the furniture of the house. The next day he had a chance to appear on TV and tell the truth. But suddenly, Dr. Sophie remembered a very important thing. She ran to her car and went to the TV station. She met Charlie and told him about what is called a placebo, which means that if the brain is convinced of anything, the body will react to this belief as a fact. This means that if Charlie says that shadow people is something that actually exists, a disaster will occur because it will be broadcast on national television and there will be an alarming increase in the number of victims. But Charlie attached no value to her words and went to talk about what was wrong with him. Before the program started, he was watching the news, where this lady talked about the spread of skin condition as soon as they talked about it on television, and that was because of a placebo. When the program started and he was given the floor, he had to think long and hard, either to say what he had and cause an incalculable wave of deaths, or take the opinion of a scientist. But he was brave and daring when he said that everything was just a trick to get followers to the broadcast. Then he got out of the program, so he saved hundreds of lives and got to work in a place that doesn't fit his intellectual level. So pay attention to what you listen to. Please click like if you like this story and see you in the next video.